My name is Peter Mendelman. I grew up out here in East on this property, Harbor Marina. My three siblings, and we all. And I've moved back to East Hampton in Springs. We have a house on the harbor now. My wife and two kids and I. We moved back in 2003 and have been here in the marina business ever since. So we have 4 marinas on 3 Mile Harbor. We have about 22 employees that goes up to almost 50 employees in the summertime, and 2 major locations. A lot of dock hands in the summertime, and in the winter we have technicians, yard crew, stuff like that. In February we're still in the depths of winter, but starting in March we're starting to get ready to put boats back in the water. And if the weather's good, we're actually starting to launch. Back in 2020, it was a bit different because I would say there was a state of confusion. The first data started coming out from China and the World Health Organization. I actually started tracking some of this on a spreadsheet. And starting with when there were 60 cases worldwide and 6 in New York State, the government was starting to describe this terrible disease that had 2 to 3% mortality, and people were dying, and not everybody was nervous, but I in particular was nervous and wanted to keep our employees safe. I kind of saw it as a series of battles. Very soon, in March, instead of being able to launch boats, we were implementing procedures like putting in remote workstations for our workers. We were trying to engage them and make them aware of the problem. And we had an all-hands meeting, and I went through, I'm an engineer, what exponential growth is. I used the finger thing where you go from 1 to 2 or 400, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000. And very quickly, within 15 to 20 fingers, you're at 1 million people. And that's how fast it was growing back then. And I had to explain that to my staff so that they would take it seriously. Stay away from other people. Wear masks. This is serious. People are dying. No one knew back then. It was confusion. How is it being transmitted? Is it through touch? Do you have to wear gloves? Do you have to bring your hand sanitizer with you everywhere you go, which we're still doing? Or is wearing masks enough? And so we started making change happen with our staff. We've spent a lot of money getting new workstations set up for the staff. We had regular meetings. We started communicating to customers. Things changed. We were shut down when all of New York went on pause in early April. Governor Cuomo shut the state down. We tried to be essential for a while. We have a fuel dock in the background here. We supported the Marine Patrol, and we had some staff that was working, but then, people started, quote unquote, reporting on other businesses, and we were told, you better be careful. The remote work continued, but we couldn't launch boats. We couldn't get them in the water. And for us, that meant potentially losing the entire season because there's a limited window. You got to get the boats in for people to use. And if we lost it, we would have lost it forever. So I'm on the board of our trade association, and we started talking with the governor's office about, hey, we can work safely. We're outside when we're working on boats. We're far away from each other. Inside, our office people are working remotely. Please let us get back to work. And the construction industry was making the same case. And I think, the governor's office made marinas and golf courses kind of a test case for, can you have recreational businesses operate safely? Because we had described everything we were doing as an industry. And we were fortunate because in late April, the governor allowed golf courses and marinas to reopen. It was a crazy year because everybody had moved out here from from New York City to the Hamptons, and bike shops, right, were crazy busy. You couldn't get within a block of a bike shop, lines out the door. Everybody wanted a boat because it was a safe haven to get away. You can socially distance with your family, with your social nest or your social circle out on the water and be away from everybody and still have a great time. So the boating business actually boomed. Sales went through the roof in terms of new boats. We don't sell new boats, but they all started coming here and we had to service them. And the summer was just a continual battle of trying to stay on top of keeping the staff safe and keeping our customers safe. You know, putting in hand wash stations, putting in extra sinks outside, figuring out ways to separate bathroom facilities, or keeping our clubhouses closed. And there were surges, you know, through the year, up and down. The fall came around. We got all the way to Christmas before, and we thought we were home free. And then all of a sudden, right at Christmas, 2 of our staff members got it. One mechanic who was older, who was really hurt for 3 weeks, and one younger man who had a bad case but bounced back fairly quickly. And that put the fear of God in us, and we went through, and we're going into 2021 still very, very concerned. And come March, vaccines came out, which was the ray of hope, right? And our older family got vaccinated first, but by April, May, June, we were able to get our vaccines. The state did a fantastic job. At Southampton College, you could drive through. It was awesome. And people started getting vaccinated. The summer came around. We had more surges. But by the fall, 90% of New York State above the age of 18 was vaccinated. And we thought we were going to be okay in fall of 2021, but now it's surging again through the unvaccinated people. So, it's been a challenge. We go from about 22 year-round staff to close to 50 in the summertime, and that's mostly dock hands, college kids, high schoolers. And in 2020, it was really hard to find people. And our customers were very understanding. Our restaurant, we lease it out to Bostwick's on the harbor. They were shut down in 2020. They relied on people from down in the Caribbean to come back, and they've been coming back for decades, the same people, but the borders were shut down. So they couldn't get their staff, and they couldn't open, even if they were allowed to. The restrictions were very difficult for them. This year they've opened, but the staffing issues continue. They're the same. And, we've started having to have people come from, for example, Center Moriches and Hampton Bays. That's where our recruiting has had to come from. And thank goodness, during the pandemic in 2020, the Long Island Railroad shut down a lot of routes. But fortunately and unfortunately, traffic was terrible as well on Route 27 because everybody had moved out here. The trade parade was going crazy. Everybody was renovating their houses, an hour and a half sitting on Route 27. And this year we lobbied to get the Hamptons commuter line put back in. So one of our staff members who comes from from Center Moriches can now drive to Hampton Bays, and instead of spending an hour and a half on the highway, 20 minutes on the train, which is fantastic. Remote working has been a blessing because the people who have to live through these commutes are office workers. Sometimes they can be more productive at home, not waste 2 hours a day commuting, and that's something we're going to continue. During the first year, 2020, customers were understanding. The COVID pandemic was going on. It was a real excuse. This year in 2021, the problem is kind of more behind the scenes. Why isn't my boat ready? Well, I can't get the parts. 3 weeks to get a part that used to come overnight. Well, my engine's blown. Can you get me a new engine so I can salvage the rest of the summer season? I'm sorry, I can't get you an engine for 48 to 52 weeks. They're just not available. So this year, parts availability has been tremendously hard. It's the same thing with new cars and new boats. Apparently the parts are being made in the factories, but they just can't get through our ports. And it was a global pandemic, right? because some of the factories that used to make these things, computer chips, the computers that run the engines, people don't think there's computers on a boat, but you have a steering wheel computer, an engine computer, and a computer that talks to the other two, and you multiply that by the number of engines, you got 18 computers on a boat, and all the computer chip manufacturers were shut down. That's why Detroit couldn't make cars. So it's been a real challenge. The community is always split, and our community includes the year-rounders and the people who come out from New York City. And I loved seeing the people come out from New York City. They're our customers, our friends. We got to see them earlier and later and more than we ever did before. But that had its set of negatives for the community in terms of traffic, and it's just the stores were packed and no one could get anything, and some of the year-round people were frustrated with that, which is understandable, but you can't blame somebody for wanting to be in this beautiful environment, and I think it was a real positive. I would have to say 3 conversations. The first was with an older, it was early in the pandemic, like in April, and it was an older psychotherapist whose brother passed away in a nursing home. And it really came home to us and really made us feel, oh my God, this is really serious, somebody we know. The second one was a little later in the summer. Bob was walking down the dock with his wife, and he just looked yellow. And I said, my God, Bob, what happened? And he said, well, I had pretty bad. Both my wife and I had COVID quite badly, and I'm fortunate to be alive. But that was 4 or 6 weeks ago, and now I'm still recovering. And it just kind of elaborated that this is not just a get better kind of thing, but the symptoms and the issues can last with you for a long time. And then the third was later in the summer, possibly in the fall. I don't even remember at this point, but I always used to get my bagels at North Main Street at Hampton Bagels, and was always used to seeing the father there behind the counter. And I went in to get bagels, and I saw the son there, and I said, hey, how's your dad doing? And he said, he passed away last week. And I was just taken aback, and that really hurt and hit home. And everybody knows somebody who died, but when it's somebody who you're used to interacting with, it's tough. The pandemic started in an absolute state of confusion. It evolved. It was a series of battles. They were all new battles: the battle of awareness, the battle of implementing change, the battle of dealing with it over time and staying on top of it, the battle of complacency. And hurricanes, storms, we go through that every year. We know what we're doing. It's a well-drilled, well-oiled machine, and we just run the drill. Everybody's on overtime. You haul out 100 boats, you get them safe, you secure the lines in the water, and we deal with that every year. So that would be the biggest difference. Is the pandemic was just a real unknown, and it evolved over time, over a long period of time. One word is tough. Maybe just wow, right? It was a huge surprise. Everything was confusing. Wow, what's going on? Wow, what do we do next? Wow. Think about what our doctors and nurses are doing to help treat everybody, working overtime, maxing out. And wow, what about that technology? In a year, the vaccine was developed. Incredible, right? That's never happened before. And treatments now, 2 years later, where you can take a pill like Tamiflu. Fantastic that we live now in technology, in an era where technology is available to help us with this. We have a dock master who's from Maine. We call him a Mainer. He's a Boston Red Sox fan, just diehard Boston Red Sox fan. And when we started this, I told my staff, Nobody in our generation has experienced a pandemic like this. Nobody. But this dockmaster, who's 83 years old, said, we were talking about it, and he said, look, when my dad, when I was 8 years old, took me down to see a Boston Red Sox game from Maine, my mom cried. And I said, why? He said, because the polio pandemic was going on, and she was concerned that I was going to get it. And, you know, that institutional or community or population knowledge didn't exist for us. We weren't used to pandemics. We were used to we weren't used to disease, Black Plague, whatever you want to call it. And COVID was insidious, right? It wasn't like you'd see sores on yourself or see physical disfigurement afterwards. Long COVID was brain fog and things like that. So, wow.